Coming up, Piers Morgan interviewed former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett on Uncensored last night. He's the former Prime Minister, of course, who's got some very strong views on what should be going on in that part of the world. And he asked him what a proportional response to Hamas looks like. Have a look at this.
So it's not about proportionality to what happened, it's about preventing what will happen. What we've realized is that we have a ISIS state on our border. People who will rape, murder, dismember bodies, kill babies from point blank. So it's not about what happened, it's about the future. How do we protect and defend Israel? There's only one way: total eradication of Hamas. So when you think about proportionality, it's not about the numbers, it's about how we get them out. But I will say, Piers, that IDF is very focused on preventing unnecessary deaths. That's why we went out of our way, according to international law, and we allowed roughly 800,000 Gazans from northern Gaza to evacuate away from harm's way. So in the theater of operations, as has been already made public, is going to be primarily northern Gaza. And we're allowing ample time, giving precaution, warning, bending over backwards to reduce the amount of civilian casualties.
Naftali Bennett there, former Israeli Prime Minister, talking to Piers Morgan on Piers Morgan Uncensored, back, of course, on Monday at 8 p.m. The show, which has been going from strength to strength ever since it started here at TalkTV, and is really being said to define what is absolutely going on in the Middle East at the moment, because it's a worldwide problem. We've seen this morning that Vladimir Putin has now invited Hamas to come to Russia to meet some Iranian leaders and some Russian leaders as well. Joining me now is a former Israeli politician who served as a member of the Knesset for Independence and the Labour Party as well, Dr Einat Wilf. Doctor, a very good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I mean, it's hard to imagine, really, that 20 days on from that horrific day on October the 7th, we're still kind of locked in an argument, if you like, around the world about whether Israel's response is proportionate, what should happen, whether there should be some kind of humanitarian aid scenario, whether there should be a pause, whether there should be a ceasefire. What's the feeling in Israel at the moment?
Here we don't have much argumentation because we, in a very brutal and visceral way, understand the threat. We understand what we need to get rid of. An earlier guest said that the most fundamental thing of any government is to secure the safety of their citizens. And we understand that we have a direct and immediate and substantial threat on our borders to our very safety, to our very existence. We have people who have made it clear that they're fighting for nothing less than the eradication of the state of Israel from the river to the sea, that they are willing to butcher toddlers to grandparents. I mean, we've heard what they did. Some people saw it. And we're seeing that this is what they said they were going to do in all these demonstrations over the decades, when Palestinians yelled, "Itbach el Yahud," butchered the Jews, and people who felt uncomfortable translated it as resist Israelis. But no, they actually meant what they said, and that given the opportunity, they would butcher the Jews, and they would make sure that Israel, as the one state that is guaranteeing the safety of the Jewish people, will not exist. That's the threat we're facing, and that's the threat that we need to eradicate, whatever it takes.
And I'm totally in agreement with you. I mean, I have seen some incredible performances by some of the world's media, and many of them here in this country, particularly the BBC, who seem convinced that the only form of aggression now being carried out is from Israel's side towards the people of Gaza. I mean, nobody ever seems to mention, and whenever I've had these arguments in the past with people, the rockets that get fired into Israel every single day from Gaza by Hamas and by several other groups as well. I presume that's still ongoing.
Oh, of course. Just yesterday, I had to go twice because there was a rocket barrage here in central Israel. Had to go to the safe room. This is ongoing. What you see in the BBC and other places is two phenomena that we've seen for years now. First, the complete reversal of cause and effect when it comes to Israel. Whatever Israel does is somehow the result of some sinister evil and has nothing to do with what Palestinians have just done. The notion that Palestinians, Hamas, the terrorist groups, never have to accept any consequences for their actions. So a complete reversal of cause and effect. And then we see another thing that is even more troubling, is that for decades, we've seen the mental preparation for various people and organizations to say they had it coming to them because you present Israel as the epitome of all evil, using words that define evil. And when you do that for decades, year after year, you create the sense that Israel is a unique evil. You set the intellectual moment for people to look at these massacres and say, okay, they had it coming and there should be no consequences for that.
Yeah. Is it surprising, though, to you that this time there is such a kind of anti-Israeli feeling in many places? You know, there's marches going all over the place. I mean, of course, we'd expect it in certain countries in the Middle East. We'd expect people to be supportive, although, of course, not that supportive, because Egypt say they don't want any Palestinian refugees, and Jordan says they're not going to take any either, so they can stay where the hell they are. But just in places like the United States of America, where the academic world seems to have gone insane, you know, where Jewish students are being, you know, locked in places and being attacked in the streets, and where projections are being put on the side of buildings in very, you know, high-minded institutions in support of Hamas. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it.
So the reason that I'm not surprised is that this has been my focus of my writing and my speaking for years now, if not 2 decades, about the creation of the intellectual atmosphere that allows for people to believe that the eradication of Israel, the killing of the Jewish people, is justified and legitimate because Israel is presented as evil. I remember many years ago, I visited Jewish students in British universities. And I remember at the time, this was more than 10 years ago, that I said that I felt that I was visiting Jews in the Soviet Union. They wouldn't publicize the event. They didn't want people to know about it. They feared for it. So this has been building up for a long time. And what we're seeing it now, we're seeing it erupt. But this has been something that has really been building up for years and even decades.
And politically speaking now as well in this country, it is an issue. The leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer, who may become the next Prime Minister, has found himself in a bad place because initially he said he supported Israel's siege of Gaza. He supported Israel's actions, whether they were stopping aid, whether they were stopping electricity, whether they're stopping water, much of which, of course, is over-exaggerated in any event. He's now being urged by people, including the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, to call for a ceasefire.
The only thing that should be called for, and I'm still amazed that it's not called for, and I've studied World War II and what the Allies were, what the demands were from Nazi Germany, from Imperial Japan. The only thing that should be asked, and then everything could end tomorrow, the immediate and unconditional release of all the kidnapped hostages, the complete disarmament of all of Gaza and Hamas and all terrorist organizations in the West Bank, the handing over of all the perpetrators of the atrocities to war crimes tribunals, and the complete renunciation of the century-long battle of from the river to the sea, of having no Jewish state. Those are the things that should be demanded. The fact that people do not feel even comfortable to demand it is part of the process that much of the West has gone through to kind of say that Palestinians have no agency, there should be no consequences for their actions, we can't demand certain things of them. These things should be very clear and demanded. A ceasefire is a complete cop-out of cowards who are not willing, even today, to understand the threat that we are facing.
And Einat, just finally, do you fear for Israel at this moment in time? Is this perhaps the worst moment that Israel's had?
It is certainly a moment that we understand, again, deeply how fragile the idea of sovereign and free Jews having their own state, being able to defend themselves. Israeli society always knew that we had to be both Sparta and Athens. We had to be mobilized to defend ourselves and to be a vibrant, creative democracy. I think for too long we settled on being Athens. We didn't understand how fragile it is. We need to be a society mobilized to our defense and, at the same time, continue being a thriving, creative democracy.
Einat, thank you very much indeed. Einat Wilf there, former Israeli parliamentarian and writer, of course, thinker of what it is to be a modern Israeli and what it is to be under siege from every single nation surrounding you.